Hi, I'm Selena, and I'm from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Alexander McCall Smith. And he is a mystery writer, among other things, and I'm going to let him explain what it is that he writes.
Well, Selena, hello. Yes, I write a whole lot of series of books. I'm a
Yes.
serial novelist, and so I write about five or six series,
Mhm.
some of which are mystery series in the broadest sense, and others are not that at all. So I'm quite happy to be described as a mystery writer who writes other books, or as a writer of other books who also writes some mysteries. I don't mind. The range is quite broad.
Mhm. Okay. So what is it that you would like to speak about first? Which series is it?
Well, I suppose my best known series is the Number One Ladies Detective Agency series.
Hmm.
And recently we've published volume 24 of that series. It's been going for some time. I had no idea right at the beginning that I would end up in this long literary conversation with Precious Ramotswe of the Number One Ladies Detective Agency in Botswana, but that's the way it happened. So that series has been going on really for 25 years, quarter of a century, really. The most recent one is From a Far and Lovely Country. And in that book, we're back in Gaborone, Botswana, where we find the office of Mara Matswe, a woman who helps people with problems in their lives. My books don't contain any crime, really. There's nobody does anything really very nasty in the books. Mara Matswe is more of I suppose, a psychologist or agony aunt who helps people with the problems in their lives. So it's not crime at all. So if you're looking for murders and matters of that sort, I'm probably not the not the author for you. In this series, really the main thing is insight into the life of this remarkably nice woman who lives in Botswana, the sort of person you really would like to sit down and have a cup of tea with. That's what they're about. And this latest book is very much much that, where she helps somebody who's looking for her roots in a sense, looking for connection with people and with the country. She helps her to find that. And Mara Matsui often does that sort of thing. She helps people find other people that they're looking for, which I suppose you could probably say most of us are doing in one way or another as we go through life. We're looking for some sense of belonging, some sense of place, some sense of being anchored, whether in particular values or in place, in a world that can sometimes seem really rather overwhelming and at times also very threatening. I mean, if
Mhm.
one looks at the world today, it's uh, it's a place where there's a great deal of uncertainty, worry, and suffering, and I think people are wanting comfort in those circumstances, and they're wanting to connect with other people in a peaceful and fulfilling way.
Mhm. So, what actually gave you the inspiration for your whole number one ladies detective agency stories?
Well, I'd lived and worked in Botswana, which is a
Hmm.
remarkable country. Botswana is a very beautiful country in the southern part of Africa. It's landlocked. It's tucked away there. It's quite a large country, as I say, a very beautiful country, which still has vast tracts of unspoiled Africa within its boundaries. And when I was there, I was struck by the decency of the people. The people
Mm.
really are very nice indeed. And I was taken by this, and I was impressed by the culture and by the history of the place. And I developed a considerable fondness for it. And so I went back every year. to Botswana. I had an association with the University of Botswana where I'd been working, and so that continued for many years. And suddenly I sat down and thought, well, I'd like to write about the life of a woman living in Botswana, so that I could say something about the lives of these really very appealing, good people. And the result of that was the first book, The Number One Ladies Detective Agency. And I thought that that would be it. I was writing books about other subjects as well. But I kept coming back in my mind to the world of Ma Ramatswe, Precious Ramatswe, who's the main character in that, and to her very warm outlook on life. And the result is a very long series of books. She's a presence in my life. She has, I'm happy to say, become a friend of many people throughout the world who like her view of things. She's a very intelligent, intuitive woman, but a kind woman. And so these books are really about kindness, which is something that I think we yearn for. We see about us all the time confrontation and conflict, and we don't want that. We want kindness and forgiveness and various other things that Ma Ramatswe brings to the table.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Did you have to do any research at all for your latest book?
No, my books, I'm afraid to say, don't involve any research of any substance. I regard living as the
Mm-hmm.
research project. I think if you're alive and you keep your eyes open, that's your research. That's how authors do it. You go through life, you listen to what people are saying to you. You listen to their conversations. I'm a great one for listening to conversations. One doesn't like to eavesdrop, but nonetheless, if you do hear what people are talking about, it's often really quite intriguing. So observing fellow humanity, in a sense, is what it's all about if you're a novelist.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to your Detective Varg series. Can
Yes,
you tell us a little about that?
well, that's a series which I started comparatively recently. I've written 4 books in that
Mm-hmm.
series, the latest one being The Discreet Charm of the Big Bad Wolf. And I had so enjoyed watching on television Scandi Noir series. The Scandinavians make compelling television series. Some of them are concerned with matters criminal. There are series about investigators of various sorts. Others aren't. There was a very good political series called Borgen, which I very much enjoyed. But a lot of people have taken a great interest in, understandably, in what they call Scandi Noir, Scandinavian noir fiction, in which various Scandinavian detectives in places like Sweden or Denmark or wherever pit their wits against malefactors of various sorts. And I thought, why should Scandinavian novelists have all the fun, and why can't some of the rest of us write about Scandinavian crime? In this case, there is crime, but very, very modest crime. And so I invented a detective who works in Malmö in Sweden called Ulf Varg. Ulf means wolf in Danish, and Varg means wolf in Swedish. So he's Wolf, and he works in the department of sensitive crimes, which of course aren't real crimes at all. They're sort of very, very bizarre infractions of various sorts. And he has a dog called Martin, who is the only dog in Sweden who's been trained to lip read, which is a little detail which I rather like. I don't know whether that's possible, whether a dog ever could be trained to lip read, but in my book it does. And so these books are, I hope, an amusing contribution to the Scandinavian literature. I call them Scandi Blanc rather than Scandi Noir because everything that happens is very innocent. There are no murders, there are no homicides, nothing nasty happens. It's just really rather odd things that Ulf has to look into. So I have great fun with that, and I've become very fond of this character Ulfar and intend to write more books about him.
I've actually read that you created a kind of a genre of your own with
That's right,
this.
Scandi Blanc, yes.
Yeah, yes, that's great. And um, what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out? Let's 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 go back to the number one ladies detective agency. What was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting it out?
Well, I suppose firstly I had to recognize, as I fully did, that I was an outsider writing about another country. So you have to be careful about that. And in my particular case, I'd lived there, and I had great affection for it. And so I wasn't writing critically about Botswana, and I've always said that these books are, in a sense, a sort of love letter to a country. They're written in admiration of a country, because I very much admire what Botswana and the people of Botswana have achieved. So I was conscious of that, and conscious, therefore, of the limitations of my knowledge of the subject. But I think that if you're writing in a positive vein, that makes that much easier, because you're not looking for issues, you're not looking for problems. You're celebrating human nature. You're celebrating benign human nature, which I think is pretty much the same in whatever society you look. You'll see that there are good people in every society who have the same virtues. These books are about virtues, really, about being kind and being helpful and compassionate towards people. So that's the background to that. The thing which I suppose I felt with the number one ladies detective agency, and it's a consideration in all of my books, is I wanted to try and get the tone right, and I wanted to get the conversation between the various protagonists right. And so I have, over many years, listened to and had experience of the sort of English that is spoken in sub-Saharan African countries, and it's very beautiful, because there are lovely cadences in it. The English language is a language which is shared by so many different countries that different countries have a different angle on it, so to speak, and have a different diction. I wanted to get that really rather appealing flavor of African English across to people who perhaps hadn't encountered it. And so that was something that I was a bit of a challenge. The interesting thing about African English of that sort is that it's spoken by people who have perhaps learned English as their second language. It may not be their mother tongue, and therefore they've learnt the rules of grammar, which is a great thing. That if you learn the grammar of a language, it means you're going to use it rather more correctly than if you would if you had not learnt the rules of grammar. So the English which is spoken, for example, in contemporary Britain, is sometimes corrupted by a casualness and by a lack of attention to grammatical rules. And I always love hearing English spoken in a correct manner, in a conventional manner. I'm unashamed about that. Now I accept that there are different approaches to the language, but I always respond very well to that sort of English, and I wanted to get that across. So Mara Matsui speaks in sentences which contain a verb and a subject.
Yes. And no
And of course,
slang.
no slang, you see. So if you were trying to convey what the way people spoke in day-to-day life in some societies, it would look really, really dreadful on the page, because every second word would be the word like, for example, or or any of these verbal tics that
Yes.
can affect language. So I unashamedly write this rather different sort of dialogue in my books, and I think it looks better on the printed page, and I hope it's better on the ear. But of course, I accept that if you go out on the street, you may not hear too many sentences with verbs and subjects and so on.
Do you find that you try and do that with your other books as well?
Yes, yes. So in my books, many of my books are set, I suppose most of my books are set in Scotland, where I live, and there
Yeah.
I will use what I suppose we might call old-fashioned English. I do put Scots terms into my Scottish books, because there is a language called Scots, which has a terminology of its own, a vocabulary of its own, and some of the words that are used in the Scots are very beautiful. They're sometimes just seem to me to be utterly suitable for what they are trying to convey. So I do that. I'm also interested. I write some of my stories are set in Australia, and again, when I'm in Australia, as I frequently am, I really enjoy listening to how people speak and the expressions they use, the intonation, the perhaps some special words that they use. We are immensely lucky in speaking the English language, because it's so phenomenally rich. It really is. There's so many different forms of it. It's phenomenally rich. When I'm in the United States, I really enjoy listening to the subtle differences in the way in which people speak. Many people outside the United States think that there's a standard form of language used in America, and that's not true.
Definitely not.
It's definitely not. And I delight in those variations. So, for example, I absolutely adore Southern English language in the US. I think I can sit and listen for hours to people speaking with a Southern accent in the US. It's absolutely beautiful. It's as if you wandered onto the stage for a Tennessee Williams play or something of that sort. It really is lovely. I spent 2 periods as a visiting professor in Dallas in the past, and that was quite interesting, because some of my colleagues at the institution I was at in Dallas spoke with what I'd call as an old-fashioned Texas accent, and it was just gorgeous. And then there are more modern accents which actually have which are less varied, or perhaps more have more in common with northern US English. And then there are all sorts of subtle differences which I don't know much about, but which one encounters. So I delight in all that. Similarly, in Australia, you get all sorts of varieties within Australia.
I didn't realize that about Australia.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
do. You will get variations of that, and of course, accents are always changing. Languages change. Languages being enriched. I don't think that you should take a a very sort of static view of language and say that the only form of English, for example, which is admissible is the English that we were speaking 20, 30 years ago. That's ridiculous, because it's constantly being enriched, and sometimes it's enriched in a way which leads to brief variations in the language, and sometimes those are real significant shifts in meaning, which obviously are going to be around, and the language changes. So we're living in a time when we're seeing the disappearance of the accusative case in English, which is something which my ear picks up, but I realize that we're actually on the cusp of a change where, in certain situations, the word me is going to disappear and it's going to be replaced by the nominative case I. That's interesting. And there comes a point at which the new usage must become the correct usage, and the other usage, the old usage, will seem to be wrong. Then there are changes which I think are not to be welcomed at all. And I alluded earlier on to the intrusive word like. Now, that I think is a very sinister,
Yes.
sinister word, because it's replacing a whole series of words which contain subtle nuances of meaning. So people won't say things like, I said X or Y. They'll say, I was like X or Y, and X or Y there may be a statement, or maybe a state of mind, or a feeling, or an emotion. Now that is impoverishing language. And if you impoverish language, you impoverish the mental possibilities of the person using the language. If we have a subtle and extensive vocabulary, then we're going to have a subtle and extensive inner life. But if we only have few words, we're restricted in how we can express ourselves and what we can share of our inner lives with other people.
Interesting. I know, but there's always so many new words that are coming up. Just with new technology, you've got all these new words that keep getting into into our lives.
Indeed, the new words, and I think the new words are great fun. I love reading the annual list that some dictionary compilers produce of words which have made it into the dictionary that year. That's great. I like that very much indeed, and I welcome the new words, and often they solve a problem. They're describing something that we need to describe. And the other day, I'll give you an example. The other day, I had an email from a friend of mine who was visiting the Caribbean. He was on the island of St. Lucia, and this friend of mine had been European Union ambassador in his professional career, and he was going back to places where he had had some sort of association in his professional life. And he said that he met this man who was acting as a guide for him, and this man said to him that his life's ambition was to get a word, his new word, into the Oxford English Dictionary. And his new word was based on a very tricky tree that grows on the island, which has got rather sort of uncomfortable abrasive bark. So it's a sort of prickly, uncomfortable tree that you really wouldn't try and climb. You'd hurt yourself if you tried to climb. And it's called apparently the gris-gris tree. And his word is gregarious. And he that would describe a difficult, prickly person. Now, I think that's a
Wow.
tremendous word. And I would like to assist him to get that word into the general vocabulary. So I'm going to, with his permission, I think he's going to give me the permission because he wants the word to flourish. I'm going to try and use that at some point in one of my books and say,
That would
here,
be wonderful.
yeah, here's a good word, gregarious. And I think actually it is a good word when we're trying to describe somebody who's a little bit difficult. Um, and I think we all know people like that. You've got to be careful how you deal with them. Sometimes we have various expressions to deal with that. We say so and so has to be handled with kid gloves.
Hmm.
That's a good one, where you know you can't push these people and that they might. But we could equally just say, oh, she's a bit gregarious.
That's a great idea.
I'm sure you don't. I'm sure, Selena, you don't have any customers like that, but other bookshops might.
That's, that is quite true. So,
Yeah.
what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, various exciting things. I have started or have written the first book in a new series, um,
Hmm.
which is going to be started um, in February of this coming year, February 2024. And that's called The Perfect Passion Company. And that's the title of the first book in the series. And that'll be published in New York on St. Valentine's Day. Which I think is a suitable day for a book of that title. And that's about an introductions agency or marriage bureau, as they used to be called, in Edinburgh, in Scotland, the job of which is to introduce people who don't want to use online dating. Now, most people these days who want to meet other people with a view to having a relationship, marrying, or whatever, they will go online and they'll meet their partners online. And I gather that's the standard way in which people meet other people these days. But there are some people for whom that is not an attractive proposition because they may have had a bad experience with online dating, for example, or they may realize that people who go on these who put themselves up on the internet for online dating aren't using a recent photograph. That the photograph might be a little bit long in the tooth, shall we say. And so they're the people who might want to have a more personal service. And so these companies still exist. They're less common than they used to be, but there are agencies, introduction agencies, which will try and match people who suit one another. And of course, many societies actually have matchmakers. Matchmakers occupy an important part of many societies. For example, in India, matchmakers are very important indeed, because they try and bring families together, and they look at all sorts of issues of suitability and whatnot. So this is about a marriage bureau in Edinburgh, and that's volume 1, which is appearing in February. And of course, a marriage bureau is a terrific way of getting an insight into the lives of a whole range of people, because anybody might come through the door and say, you know, can you introduce me to somebody? And so you see the life of that person and their issues, their problems, their hopes, their ambitions, and so on.
Are these short stories?
No, they're each of the books will have, no, they aren't short stories. Each of the books will have one or two central cases, so to speak, rather like the Mara Musfie books, the Number One
Oh,
Ladies
okay.
agency books. So they're novels, but each of them will have one or two characters who are looking for somebody. But they're not short stories. It's an overall novel.
Okay, great. So now I have questions about you as a writer. What
Mhm.
is your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
I think the bit that I particularly enjoy is the actual writing of the book, and I think there's no greater pleasure in my view than being able to sit down and tell a story or write about the world as you see it. That's a great privilege to be able to do that. So I love working with words. Working with words is like working with clay. Not that I've ever worked with clay, but there's the same fashioning of an object from raw material. The raw material, the words, you bring them together, you're creating a world. It's a wonderful sense of creating a world. If you write about a scene, lo and behold, you've created a world with feeling in it, with characters, and also of course, set in a place. I like describing place very much indeed. So that, for me, is the greatest pleasure. But I also very much enjoy. I do a lot of events and touring. I very much enjoy meeting the readers and exchanging views with the readers about the books. Because if you share a book with somebody else, and this could be two readers sharing the book or author and reader sharing the book, you're actually joining in a friendship. You're entering upon a friendship in which the two of you have a mutual friend, namely the character in the books, and that's
Mhm.
a
True,
great a great thing to experience.
true, very true. So, what was your favorite adventure that you've had during your writing career?
Well, now I don't know. That's an interesting question. I suppose what has perhaps been most um, remarkable for me in this journey that I've had of the last 20 plus years of being a full-time writer is uh, going to places and meeting people that I wouldn't otherwise have met. So the books have opened doors. Uh, they've brought me into contact with people whom I otherwise wouldn't have encountered, and that has been tremendous. And sometimes those meetings have been quite significant for me. I've had readers, very interesting readers, who have revealed that they read the books, and I've met them. So I've met people, met some very interesting people, and then I also have many moving experiences in which I meet people who have perhaps been helped by, particularly Mara Motswe, one of the characters. I've had experiences where really I suppose, where I have felt tearful because the experience is so powerful. People have written to me and said that they've shared the book perhaps with a dying relative or something of that sort, and that moves me greatly. So there've been a lot of emotional experiences which have come through that.
Wow, interesting. So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned during your writing career?
I suppose the lesson that I've learned, which has had the greatest impact on me, is that people invest a great deal in the literary characters with whom they enter into a relationship. So if the readers are fond of a character, you as writer have real responsibilities in relation to that. So you owe it to the reader, to the many readers or friends of that particular character, to be careful with your treatment of the literary characters. You don't
Interesting.
you don't own your literary characters. If you're a writer, you do not own those characters. They're shared with the reader. That's really important.
Wow. Very, Very true. Very interesting. So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers aside from that?
Well, I suppose I would say with other writers, I get many comments or approaches, perhaps sometimes from people who are embarking upon a career as a writer or who would like to embark on a career as a writer. And I always say to them, write from the heart, write from your heart, write what you want to say, and don't write what you think other people will want you to write, because that really will come through. That will be apparent. Write from the heart and persist and believe in what you're writing. That's very
Hmm.
important. In writing, becoming a writer can be a very discouraging experience. You've got to carry on knocking at the door. You've got to battle to get things published. It's hard. It's rather like being a singer. If you talk to singers, they have the same experience. And I think you just have to persist. So that's the other bit of advice I would give is persist. Everybody has rejection letters. Everybody can get discouraged by it, but just persist.
Right. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you with your work?
I haven't ever belonged to a writers group. There are writers groups. I think they do a very important job. Many people will be able to find in their local area a writers group where a group of people will get together and share their writing and critique various chapters or novels that people write. And I think that's very important, and that provides a certain amount of support. And I think the criticism of others can be very useful as long as it's positive criticism. I
Right.
think one wouldn't want to give anybody destructive or discouraging criticism. I think you would always recognize some merit, even in an apparently unpromising manuscript. So I think writers groups are terrific, and people who belong to writers groups, I think, get great satisfaction from them.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from a lot of writers, is
Mm.
that if you have other people to read and critique your work, you really do get a lot out of it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I have one question that I had forgotten to ask you before. When you write, do you have an outline for your books, or do you just kind of write and let the characters take you where they may?
Well, I think I'm more of the write and let the characters take you away school of thought. I do know writers who have everything plotted out meticulously before they set pen to paper or strike the first key on the keyboard. And those people are very organized people. They're the sort of people whose bookshelves are always organized alphabetically, whose shopping lists are probably organized alphabetically as well. And that's fine. It depends on how you want to approach the task of writing. I tend to have a very general idea of the plot, a general notion of what is going to happen, and then the thing grows organically. And I rather like that because writing fiction, I think, is really a matter of being in touch with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind being the part of our mind which is interrogating the world, although we aren't really conscious of the fact that it is doing that. And so if you're in contact with your subconscious mind will come up with all sorts of possibilities for the development of what you're writing. So I think you need to leave room for that to happen. And you don't want to restrict your subconscious mind, or what we might call your imagination, by confining it to strict requirements from the beginning. Therefore, let the process work and see where it takes you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of the way I would like to do it. Okay, now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
No idea. Absolutely no idea. I think that people sometimes express surprise if I give some detail about my life that they may not have thought about. I mean, people sometimes seem surprised that I very much enjoy sailing, that I enjoy being on the water.
Ah,
I don't write about it, but it's there. I think people sometimes express surprise when I confess an interest in wind instruments. I like musical instruments and like playing musical instruments, that sort of thing. I think there are things that about the things about all of us that are even our close friends may be surprised about. I think that somebody expressed surprise recently when they saw me reading a yachting magazine with pictures of boats in it, and I think they didn't really think that was the sort of
ah,
thing I would be expected to do. But yeah, no, I do. I think people sometimes express surprise when I say that I enjoy going to the gym and trying weightlifting, and that's that sort of thing. Very
that
ordinary,
kind
ordinary
of,
things in.
yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, what are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time to do them? Because you write so many things. You
Yeah,
are a very prolific writer.
I enjoy the company of friends. I think that's something which I really enjoy. I love going to lunch with friends. That's a great pleasure for me to meet a friend for lunch and then just talk about the world. Is a marvelous thing, a great treat, which I enjoy very much indeed. Passions, art. I'm very interested in art. I love looking at paintings. I like reading about art and artists. I get great pleasure from that. Um, Other things I enjoy passionately, poetry. I read a lot of poetry. I have a poetry discussion group with friends every few weeks. We sit down and virtually in a virtual sense, 6 or 7 of us, and we look at 2 or 3 poems, and I very much enjoy that.
Okay. So what does your writing space look like, and what do you need to have with you when you're writing or editing?
Well, my writing space, I'm sitting in it, and if I turn the computer, which I hope doesn't fall off the table, we're going that way, and then we're going that way there, and there's a picture. Get that
Mm.
up. There he is. Oops. There's a picture of what may be James V of Scotland, father of Mary Queen of Scots. So that's the space. Now I can't really turn the computer adequately to show the space beyond, but let me do that there. The desk. There's the desk. And in fact, I
That's
can
good.
probably show you a little bit more. The book-lined room. More books. There, I think we may see there a little statue of Robert Burns, the poet. and so on. That's my writing space.
Wow.
So
Lots of books.
I don't need to write lots of books
Lots
and
of
paper.
books.
But I also I write wherever I am. I write on planes and trains and in hotels and all over the place. I don't have to be in a particular place. Many writers have very firm conditions about where they write. You know, they've got to be facing west and a window, and they've got to have a yellow legal pad and sharpened pencil and things like that. I don't do that. I do sometimes listen to music when I write. I quite like that. As long as it's calming, reflective music. It can help.
Without lyrics.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be careful. The words can get in the way if you've got lyrics that are going to require your attention. But many lyrics don't require that. So, for example, a favorite piece of mine is the trio from Mozart's Così fan tutti, Soave sia il vento. Is the most gorgeous piece of music, in my view, ever written. It really is absolutely lovely. Now, there are words to that, and of course, I know when I listen to it, I know what the words are, and I know what the meaning is. May your journey through life be a gentle one. May the breeze that takes you on your journey through life be a gentle one. May all your ambitions come to fruition. May your plans come to fruition. Is effectively what that trio, the words of that trio, are saying. It's a gorgeous piece of music. And when I write my Isabel Dalhousie books, when I sit down for the first page of a new Isabel Dalhousie book, I'll play Soave sia il vento from Mozart, from the Così fan tutti, and that sets me in the right mood. So music sets a mood, and if I'm writing something about Mara Matsui, there are particular composers or particular pieces of music that I would use to put myself in the right place, the right mood. I think that music obviously affects us emotionally. Music is capable of calming us. It's capable of I suppose inducing a feeling of acceptance, a feeling of resolution. Music resolves, very importantly, and so I use it as a form of assistance. There's some sorts of music that are particularly suitable for writing. I'd say something like Gregorian chants are great from that point of view. I've got one or two pieces of Buddhist chants, which I think induce the right sort of, I'm no neurologist, but introduce the right sort of brainwaves.
Also, it depends on what type of genre you're writing in. Certain things are, certain things are great for horror.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to listen to heavy metal or whatever you call it. It's not. I wouldn't listen to it anyway. But it would produce, my books would go in the wrong direction if I did.
Yeah, exactly. And your characters in your mind would be going,
yeah, that's it. What's going on here? This is. I mean, I think that it's very interesting. I mean, this raises rather interesting questions about the moral nature of music. There's some music which I think is aggressive. It encourages feelings of aggression. There's music which is strident. There's music which makes people feel angry, and so on. There's a close relationship between the sort of music and the emotion within. So music, there's a morality to music, which is very, very interesting. We think of music as being a neutral language, it is a form of language, and of course we recognize that with the spoken words, there's some language, some words which are very inflammatory and which really encourage harmful thoughts or aggressive thoughts, aggression. And music can do the same thing. If you listen to some music, it seems to be suited to a sort of rage against the world. And you don't want that if you're using it as a background to your writing. Or you don't want music which is banal, which is too repetitive and banal. The sort of music that you hear in shopping malls, which is mindless, absolutely mindless. I was listening to some Christmas music the other day. I was in a public space, and although it's still November, that doesn't stop people starting to play music about Santa and his reindeer and all this sort of stuff. And oh my goodness me, it's banal. It really is absolutely awful. It really makes you wish for January. January can't come too quickly with that sort of music. It really is.
I know.
It's
Okay, next question. Do you have like a favorite drink or snack that you like to have while you're writing?
I drink red bush tea, rooibos tea, which Mara Motsbury drinks in the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, but I drink it as well. It's very refreshing. It's generally known as red bush. It's also known as under its name of rooibos, but it doesn't have caffeine. So if you're watching your caffeine intake, that's the tea to drink. It's said to be very good for you, but I do like tea. I'll drink a certain number of cups of coffee a day. I think that we have to watch the number of cups of coffee we have each day. I gather that the latest science is that a couple of cups of coffee are actually quite good for you, rather like
I think so.
very dark chocolate, which I also like. I eat 90% chocolate, which is
It's very good for you.
It's terribly good for you. Oh, yes. I mean, there's all sorts of evidence. But interestingly enough, if you eat that chocolate, Selena, your palate changes. And if you then go back to common or garden chocolate, the sort of chocolate that you get in the corner store, the sort of evil chocolate, which is full of sugar, it's too sweet for your palate. I can't eat that stuff. I really
heard that.
Oh yeah, you change. It's rather like stopping putting sugar in your tea. I remember when I was a student many years ago, I used to take 2 teaspoons of sugar in my tea. Now, if I put sugar in my tea, I'd choke. I'd collapse. So your palate, the palate changes. But tea, I can drink. You can drink any amount of red bush tea. No restrictions. So
Okay.
I like that.
And writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them with their work. And do you have any? And do they help or hinder you?
Well, I don't. We used to have cats. We used to have a Tonkinese cat. We had 2 very successful Tonkinese cats, and Tonkinese cats are the closest thing to a dog in the feline world. They're very canine in their behavior. They go for walks with you. They'd love to bark. They can't bark, but you can see them trying to bark. And we had Tonkinese cats, and my last Tonkinese cat was a great cat, one of the great cats of his generation. He was called Augustus Basil, and he was a great friend to me. And he would come and look into my study right here when I was writing, and he'd get on the table and he'd come take a close interest in what I was typing, and he would add to the manuscript by walking across the keyboard, and so you'd get a whole series of letter B or D or whatever on the screen, and that was the contribution of Augustus Basil. So he was a bit of a familiar for me, and I miss him greatly. I like dogs. I like animals in general. I'm very pro dog. Some people who like cats are anti-dog. I'm not. I'm very ecumenical in that sense. I go for. I'd love to have a dog, but the problem about having a dog is lifestyle. If I have to be away, we often are traveling, and I think that would be difficult to have a dog if you're going away a lot. Dogs tend to like to stay with you all the time. But I do enjoy the company of animals when I have it. Sometimes we take the Tonkinese cat belonging to our younger daughter, who also lives in Edinburgh, and so we'll look after her cat Lily, who's a wonderful Tonkinese cat.
Okay. I just have two more questions for you. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, of course? And I
That's
always have to give a plug. I always have to give a plug for Annie's, so you can you can get Alexander's books at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find your books?
Well, in other bookstores apart from Annie's. Annie's is obviously the principal place, the best
Thank you.
place to get them, but most bookstores will have them. So
Oh,
and your neighborhood bookstore should have them. So all I would say is the usual places.
okay. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Well, you're very kind. You can follow me, I suppose, on Facebook. There's a Facebook site, Facebook page, Alexander McCall Smith. It's there. Then I think there's also a site on what is now called X, which we refer to fondly as Twitter. So it's there, I think. There are our posts. And my website, there is www.alexandermccallsmith.com. And that has information about the latest books and what I'm up to. Facebook is quite a useful way of doing it. I think that we're regularly in touch with readers through the Facebook page.
Is that an author page or just a regular page?
I think I just describe it as a page. I mean, it might.
Because they do have separate author pages.
Oh, do they? Oh,
Yeah.
well, heaven knows. I just call it. I just
Oh,
call
okay.
it.
Your regular Facebook page.
I
Okay.
think probably the Facebook page. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful speaking with you, Alexander McCall Smith. I really appreciate your taking the time to speak with me.
I've enjoyed our conversation greatly. Thank you very much indeed
Thank
for
you.
inviting me to it.